Hello everybody, Vlog4 here. Take 2 of what's probably going to be a relatively short video. This week I ended up being pretty busy, so didn't really get a chance to do a whole lot, but still did a bit. Where are those helicopters? So, magical arrows and stuff. I've generally made projectiles a little bit faster, so it's easier to hit stuff with them, since the enemies are moving. However, there are also 3 new projectiles. You might be wondering why there's a bunch of these things lined up. The answer would be because of this. Crystal Lance. You charge it up, and you can fire it, and it can bounce off the ground. Boing. It's very fast, very expensive, but it's a good sniping weapon. And it's very powerful, so it can one-shot a tank. The AI is clearly traffic jammed over there. That makes good target practice. Yeah, that's fun. So, that's the long-range option for dealing with tanks. You can either try and take out the light units and then rush up close to deal with tanks, or you can try and snipe the tanks. Sniping the tanks will take a bit longer due to the cost from that, unless you can line up good multi-shots, though. And I do like how it bounces across the ground. Another one is the firebomb. Particle effects definitely going to need some work in the future, but the idea is pretty straightforward. It'll deal with APCs and lighter ground vehicles, infantry very well. Tanks, though, they really don't care much about it. It does a bit of damage, but not very much, since it's area of effect based. And fire based, so that's like, tanks are going to have a double resistance on that. And then the one that, you'll notice there's no art icon for this yet. Yay. Teleport. Point it at something, and you'll teleport. Clicking, it'll only normally work if there's actual space for you to teleport to an area. Still needs some work. The visuals obviously can also need some work, and that of mana. So you can get around relatively quickly, is the idea with that. Since you gotta have, some type of interesting abilities beyond straight up combat. Gonna have plan for things like a directional shield that you can use to help survive tough hits from one direction in exchange for mana. The maneuverability. Plan on also having some ones where you can spawn some supporting elements like magical weapons that will fly around and attack the enemies, or possibly a familiar of some type, though familiar doesn't as well fit in with the lore, so I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do that, but we'll see. It would be like a magically projected familiar, like a giant glowy phantasm dragon if it was, as opposed to an actual dragon getting summoned in. So it wouldn't last very long before it fades and disappears, but yeah. Various other ideas like those. Also started work on a few art assets for some other stuff, but none of that is actually done or complete yet, so for now, this is more or less what I've done this week. This is probably the most satisfying of all of the spells right now, assuming you can actually afford it. It's, yes, quite expensive. I love the part that you can bounce it off of stuff and it just goes careening up. It does slow down a little bit, so if you bounce it at too much of an angle and it just keeps skimming, it will eventually disappear. If it loses, I think that was half its speed or something, and it loses a small amount of speed each hit against the surface. Yeah. Well, that's it for this week. So, hope everyone's having a good week and all that stuff. Fireball! This thing was kinda, it's alright. For this one, it has only a small amount of inheritance when you're just moving around in hover mode, so that it's still easy to hit with. But if you're moving more quickly, then that is, it can have a higher inheritance, so that, like this, it doesn't have the same drop-off and stuff, so that you can use it as kind of like a high-speed bombing run. So, many spells will be acting differently depending on which mode of movement you are in. Like this, I don't plan on having it stop the player quite as much like it does It will have extra range if you're in flight mode, but on the other hand, you can't use it at side angles when you're in flight mode like this. That is, of course, not yet input, but for many things, there are ideas about them playing differently depending on your mode. For the record, terminology I generally just refer to, this is hover mode or helicopter mode, and this is flight mode or plane mode. So yeah, later. And for anyone who decided to stick around to the end, you get a little bonus. Some of you may have seen this post online. I plan on trying to make something interesting out of this. The portal visual, the idea of something large that snakes amorphously blobs through the air. And I feel like this would be a great type of effect to mix in when you're actually going through the portal jump part. It is interesting, to put it one way. So that's pretty much just a case of the portal spell due to a bug where upon casting it just keeps respawning itself over and over. Obviously we need to optimize to actually do anything with it, but the idea is definitely interesting. The effect. So I didn't originally have any plans for anything that would actually look like this, or act or behave in any weird ways like a blobby thing moving through the air, but after this I do want to actually add some type of feature that does something like that. It's still continuously spawning based on the initial rotation you may have noticed of the player. By the way, so bye this time, for real.